Hey everyone, this is Formats4. I don't know if you remember, but I don't know, a year or two ago now, I released a video about the old VortexPVP spawn from around the 2012 to 2013 era. Because one of the Getnerded faction members had a world save file of the entire Vortex server map. So it included the spawn and a whole bunch of bases and stuff like that. And recently, I kind of rediscovered my old Vortex Factions Nostalgia thread, and it kind of got me thinking again about old Minecraft and old factions and stuff like that. So I'm going to fly around this map, and I'm going to take tours of some of the bases that were around during that era, just to show you kind of what factions looked like way back when, and what factions look like during the era that I'm trying to emulate with that Factions Nostalgia thread. So yeah, I'm gonna go fly around, and the first base we are going to take a look at is Getnerded's base. Now, this is before I was ever in the Getnerded faction, but I was playing on Vortex at the time. I was just in a solo faction. I can't even tell you what the name of that faction was. I don't remember. But I do remember that Getnerded were the big dogs on the server, so I did make my way around this base at some point, but I never got in. So yeah, this was probably 2013, early 2013, from what this base looks like. So without further ado, let's go in. So from what I remember, the base was kind of split into three major parts. You have the upper base, which is this big guy up here. You have sort of the ground level interior of the base where they would have a lot of fights in here. I think the Kill Ryan YouTube channel actually has a couple faction battles that are actually inside these walls still up on his channel. And then down below there's the vault. So first things first is we'll kind of just tour this area because there's really not much to see. There's, some farms, there's some chests over here. We'll pop these open. And the great thing about this being the full map save is that all of the items are still in the chests, whereas just a world download from the world download mod would not have those. So we can look in here. There's just some leaves, pickaxes. Looks like they have some protection 4 armor lying around, some decent swords, and yeah, they were just at the time these guys were super rich, and I just remember them having a ton of items. But we'll fly around here and we will take a peek at some of the stuff that's in here, because I know that interests me. I don't know if this is super interesting to everyone else, but I enjoy it a lot. Just a bunch of stuff, really. And this was, I guess, just sort of a PvP tower. So yeah, let's go up into the kind of main base here. If I remember correctly from the videos that Kill Ryan had on his YouTube channel, this was the F home. So this is kind of sort of the main base, and then down there was their vault with all of their player rooms and their high-level stuff. This is where I guess they dropped out to go into that pool of water, and if there were people down there to fight, or if there were people outside the base they wanted to fight. And even though Vortex back then was a lot smaller in terms of player count, there was maybe 30, 40 active players on at a time, there was a lot of activity that was happening, and that's kind of what I'm trying to emulate with the Factions Nostalgia proposal, and it really did work, because even though there was small total amounts of players online at once, there was a ton of action, which I thought was cool. So yeah, as you can see, all the chests are just, full of just random gear and just random items just dumped everywhere. They had a ton of items from what I remember. As you can see, there's a spider spawner here. Spiders would flow in here and they would just kill them from underneath. In here looks like an enchanting room. I guess there was a pigman spawner somewhere in here. Oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. I guess compasses don't do what they're supposed to. Okay. I assume there was a pigman spawner, hence all the gold and the rotten flesh. But again, just a ton of stuff. Stuff for Kill Ryan's giveaways. A lot of garbage. Guess he wasn't giving away any good stuff, huh? Oops. So yeah, I am always fascinated with base design. I mean, even from when I was playing in Getnerded, I was much more of a base guy instead of a cannoneer or a PvPer. I loved building bases. I liked making the money in the faction. So, like, being able to see all these old bases and stuff like that, I just find fascinating all the time. And this is really cool because this is a bygone era of factions. I mean, you can see on the outside that this base has just one sand wall wrapped around it, and that was your primary base defense. Looks like there's a pig spawner in here. I assume this is how they got their food, because this was back before everyone had /feed, and food really didn't matter, and there was actually a survival element to the game. I assume that this is skeleton spawners for XP. And again, I don't even know if creeper spawners were even a thing at this point in time. I think you had to buy all your TNT, which, again, is what I'm suggesting in the Factions Nostalgia proposal. And since I keep bringing it up, I'm going to link the Factions Nostalgia thread in the link of this video. You can also go check out the video I made on the Factions Nostalgia proposal on my channel already. I haven't changed the proposal much since then. So that video is still pretty up to date. This just looks like some sort of vault. Again, just a lot of enchanted diamond gear. Again, it's not protection stuff, but it's just a lot of gear, which at this point in time was valuable. Spawners weren't valuable. It was mostly gear based. And then once we go into the vaults under the base, I can explain that in more detail. So this was kind of the main F-home area. Again, I'm not gonna dig around all of these chests, just because that would take too much time. But yeah, just tons and tons of items, tons of food. They were really rich. And again, this was the type of factions that I really enjoyed, because being rich didn't necessarily mean just having the most spawners. And again, if you want to read what all these signs say, you can slow down the video and take a peek. Again, just tons of gear. And this is what I'm trying to emulate with my Factions Nostalgia thing, is I want smaller factions, like maybe 3-member factions, a group of friends who are playing just together from school or something. They want to get together and try and have fun. They can accumulate wealth by having tons of gear, or getting special gear items and stuff like that. And so it doesn't rely on who has the most amount of donators in their faction and who doesn't have the most money off the top of the startup map to get spawners, which in turn all the spawners make you more money. And it just seems like current factions is catered more towards people who have you know, $300 donator ranks to have a bunch of in-game money off the start of the map and just come and dominate off the start of the map already. Again, just some farms. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of potion supplies, potion makings in there. We're going to continue upwards through this. Just another chest room of random stuff. Justin, who his in-game name was Caps Lock Block. Again, I think all the members of this faction, if I can remember, were Pseudo Wudo, but his account was Undead Netty at the time. Caps Lock Block, Cat MC, Chezzy Puff was a member of the faction at the time. Kill Ryan, obviously a big one. And those were the people who were in Getnerded proper. I'm sure I'm missing. Outlash was another one, I believe. Yord of Yore. These are all guys who were in the actual Getnerded faction. But the Getnerded that you guys all know today, who incorporated like OG Bizzle and Kane 101 and myself, Kane 101 and Insanic were members of the faction called Trap, whose base I also have, which is way up over in this area. I don't know why the map didn't save, but yeah, their base is up over in here. And then Ghetto, which was Kane 101 and Kunatuna's faction, which is this base over here. So a little preview of future videos to come. They were all in separate factions, and then we all joined together, or they all joined together. The following map after this and joined in a faction called Synergy, and that's when like the guys like Master Tony and them started to join. This looks like just another random mob spawner. This was Cad's house. Cad repping the Bloods. And then again, just a whole bunch of chests. None of this stuff is their top level gear, obviously, so I'm going to stop really digging in all these chests just to save some time. This was Kill Ryan's little pyramid thing. And then I don't remember whose house this was. So, sorry. So that about does it for the sort of main F home. The only other thing I didn't show off was just the raid dump area. Whenever they would go on raids, this is where they were dumping. Again, just tons and tons of gear everywhere. Again, tons of gear just from raid. I mean, look, decent gear, protection 3. I'll explain these swords in a second. These were donator swords, but I mean, like, you can just see that there's, and that, like, almost every chest has stuff in it. And it's all pretty decent gear. So now we're going to get to the really cool part. We're going to head to the vault that is all the way at Bedrock. And I guess while I'm here, I can kind of describe the scene at the time, and if I can find the, there it is, the hole that I dug. So at the time that these bases were built, and here's the vault, at the time that these vaults were built, Obsidian Destroyer was not enabled. So if you had one wall of obsidian, you were safe. So if you actually look, and I'll show you later, if you fly up and look at the outside of this, the main F home, it's checkerboarded in obsidian because you couldn't destroy obsidian, and there also were not ender pearls enabled, so you couldn't ender pearl into those holes. So as long as you checkerboarded obsidian, like if you were to do this with obsidian, your base was virtually unraidable. But then about halfway through the map, the guys in Getnerded kept pushing Dota, who was the owner at the time, who's no longer the owner, to install Obsidian Destroyer, and so he did, and that's when they made this vault, which they dug all the way down to bedrock, and they surrounded it with a bunch of layers of obsidian, and it was protected pretty well. And obviously, as I said, this was an older time of factions before dispenser cannons were refined and perfect, and so they only have one sand wall around the outside of their base. So yeah, but this was the vault, and we will be going into pretty much all the chests here. Again, protection 1 chests, protection 2 gear, 3, 4, and then this was all of just their community chest stuff. Protection 6, protection 5s. And then this is just some random stuff. But at the time, the donator ranks that you got, which you can check out what they were in the original Spawn Tour video, because I go through the enchantment signs at Spawn. The enchantments were given out in one time, or the donator gear was given out in once per map kits. So if you were to donate to the, one of the ranks was called Immortal. If you were to donate to the Immortal rank, you only got one set of protection 4 with that rank for the entire map, and that was it. There was no 24-hour kits. There was no 48-hour kits. But with that came above vanilla enchantment level gear, and also spawn eggs. So the max enchant that you could get was protection 7. Now, I don't remember whose room this was. And I'm sorry if I don't, but I just don't. But yeah, so you can see, like here, you would get protection 7 was the highest level protection enchant, and then there was an unbreaking level of 20. But the trade-off was is sometimes if you were to spend to get those ranks, you'd only get those once per map, right? Now, the higher levels you donate, sometimes you get like 2 sets of protection 4 or 2 sets of protection 5. And I think the max was like 7 sets of protection 7. But you would get that once per map. And that's what I'm trying to bring back in small doses with the the Factions Nostalgia proposal is that there would still be like Protection 4 in 48-hour or 24-hour kits, but you would also get a once per map kit with like Protection 7 gear in it. And I did just remember this was Kill Ryan's room, and Kill Ryan had a ton of gear. He was a bit of a hoarder. So you, again, going through a bunch of his chests, you can just see all the gear that he had. Stacked potions were a thing back then, and it was stacked every type of potion. So health potions, debuff potions, there was stacked splash, stacked drinkables of each kind, obviously except for the debuffs, which I would include again in the Factions Nostalgia proposal, just because I think all that stuff adds a ton to the game. I would only have drinkable buffs. No stacked splash potions, but of health, but stacked splash potions of all the debuffs would be there, because I think the stacked debuffs allow you to troll a ton, and it makes trapping a lot more fun. Yeah, so that was Kill Ryan's room. Over here was Yord of Yore and Outlash's room. This is Outlash's room. Again, I'm just going to poke around these chests. Lots and lots of high-level gear, lots and lots of maxed-out gear, Protection 6 chestplate just lying around. You know, they had so much good gear. And that was what was crazy about the server back then, is that players would, like, donate for a set of gear, and then they would lose it to Getnerded, and then they would just redonate to get more gear, and they would just keep losing it. So again, Getnerded was just completely stacked when it came to gear. Some of their best gear was in those vaults at spawn. You could pay and get a donator vault at spawn, which was only you could open it. So it was virtually, you would just pay for unraidable storage, and there's tons of good gear, which again, you can see all of that in the spawn tour video I have done previously. This was just another raid chest room. I think they, after Obsidian Destroyer was enabled, I think they pretty much migrated mostly to be down here as their main sort of base. And again, just tons of gear dumped everywhere, which is fantastic. This was... Oh, that's right. So PJMJ was a mod on the server at the time, and there was a player called the Noob Slayer 101 whose name was also Marrera, who actually, he stopped playing before I joined Getnerded, so I never met him. But this was their room, so we'll take a look at some of the stuff they had. Doesn't look like they had a lot of stuff. I remember part of what made Getnerded so great, and at least for me as a new player sort of inspiring, was that none of them had very high donator ranks when they were so successful. I think Kill Ryan was the one who had the highest ranked donator rank, which was the Reaper rank, which I think was $50. But everyone else had like the VIP, which was the $10 rank, or the, you know, Immortal, which was the $40 rank, or the Legendary, which was the $20 rank, you know, very sort of lower end donation amounts. And it was kind of inspiring because these were guys who didn't spend a ton of money, who were taking out guys with like the $300 rank and the Prot 7 gear, and they were just taking guys Protection 7 gear with like just standard Protection 4 gear, which I thought was pretty cool. So I believe this was CAD's, Caps Lock Block, and Pseudo's room. And again, you can just see Protection 4 gear everywhere. Sharpness 5 donator swords. Just tons of good stuff. Tons of good enchant books, stacked potions galore, random stuff. Tons more Protection 7, Protection 4, random stuff, tons of music discs. Just lots and lots of great gear. Food, potions, diamonds. Again, just wealth. This is the type of wealth that I'm trying to bring back with the Factions Nostalgia proposals, because I want to see this kind of gear, and I want people to feel like having gear is important, where now it feels like having gear is just secondary. I want people to raid for gear because there's lots of gear to go around. And this was considered a humongous amount of TNT back then. And in order to buy stacked potions, emeralds is how you bought stacked potions. So having emeralds was a lot. And again, speaking of stacked potions, there's a ton. So yeah, that is their base. Pretty cool to get a sort of blast from the past. Let's see if I can find the exit hole. There it is. Really cool blast from the past. This was Getnerded in 2013 before I joined them. But yeah, one sand wall, a couple of layers of obsidian on their vault down below, and that was all you needed to be competitive. And that's how factions with like 6 players could compete against these large, or compete with these large factions. Because their bases could be smaller, they could be built over time and cultivated over time. And yeah, so that was Getnerded's base. I hope you enjoyed. If you played during this era and you happen to have coordinates for one of your bases or an enemy's base or something fun that you just want to show off, please link that down below. And I will showcase it because I like doing this a lot. I think this is neat, exploring the map. So yeah, thanks for watching.